When my daughter told me, "He doesn't need your gifts," I stood there frozen, gripping the phone like it could anchor me to something real. By the end of that same week, I had rewritten my will, packed away a lifetime of holiday traditions, and turned off the twinkling lights that once made this house feel alive. What happened next didn't just redefine my relationship with her, it redefined who I believed I was as a father. I had spent hours picking that gift. It wasn't just a toy train. It was the same kind I used to build with her when she was little, except this one had her son's name carved into the wood. I wrapped it myself. I even included a letter, 2 pages long, sharing stories, memories, things I thought would make my grandson smile. I imagined him unwrapping it, laughing. I thought it would bring us all a little closer. But weeks passed. No thank you. No call. Just silence. Until one afternoon at the local charity shop, I saw it, the box, still sealed, my handwriting unmistakable. She hadn't even opened it. That's when something inside me cracked, not with rage, but with understanding, and a deep, echoing sorrow. What happens when a man tries to mend a bridge too late, only to find his love has been placed on a shelf labeled unwanted? This story might just remind you, some wounds don't bleed, but they never really heal. Before we dive into how one unopened gift exposed years of silence, guilt, and a father's desperate need to make things right, stay with me. You won't want to miss how this story ends. My name is Peter Langston. I turned 60 last fall, a number that didn't bother me until I realized how few people I had left to share cake with. I live alone in a modest house outside of Dayton, Ohio, a home that once echoed with laughter and the scent of warm cinnamon rolls when Mary was still alive. She's been gone for 8 years now. Cancer doesn't wait for love to settle its debts. After she passed, I tried to do what a good father should, hold the family together, or at least what remained of it. That family was Lisa, our only daughter. She was 30 back then, already married to a man I barely knew, raising our first grandchild, Eli. I wanted to be present. I wanted to show her that I was no longer the man who missed her piano recital in 5th grade, or who forgot to call on the night of her high school graduation because I was stuck in a meeting about bridge blueprints. I had spent most of my adult life in construction engineering. The hours were long, the deadlines brutal. But I convinced myself I was building a better life for them, even as I missed the life happening right in front of me. Lisa never said much about my absence growing up, but I could see it, in the way her hugs turned half-hearted, in how she defaulted to calling Mary when she needed advice, in how she always said thanks with her lips but never her eyes. Still, when Mary was gone, I saw a flicker. Maybe grief would bond us. Maybe I could be the dad she needed all along. I started small. Birthdays, calls, a book every few weeks for Eli, even when he was too young to read them. I didn't care. I wrote little notes in each one, short messages like, "This was your mom's favorite when she was little," or, "One day, let's read this together." When Eli turned 4, I sent a box with a little microscope set. He was obsessed with ants. Lisa texted me a photo of him squatting on the porch, peering into a plastic lens with fierce concentration. That photo became my phone's wallpaper for the next 2 years. That's when I started something else. Letters. Real ones. Pen on paper. I'd write about my childhood, Mary's goofy dance in the kitchen, how Lisa used to collect buttons and line them up by size. I hoped Eli would read them one day. Maybe even Lisa would. There was something sacred about putting thoughts on paper. Maybe because it forced me to slow down, to speak plainly. Or maybe because no one ever wrote to me like that. When Christmas approached this year, I wanted to give Eli something that would matter, something more than a plastic toy. I spent hours browsing handmade toys online, trying to find the perfect one. Then I saw it, a wooden train set, the kind with smooth oak rails, magnetic cars, and tiny pegs to personalize each one. I remembered building a similar one with Lisa when she was 7. She'd painted the wheels red and named each car after her favorite books. I ordered the set, and before it shipped, I requested a custom engraving. Eli Langston, Engineer of Dreams. Silly? Maybe. But heartfelt. I wrapped it myself. Added one of my letters, 2 pages long, filled with memories and hopes, and an old joke Mary used to tell that still made me smile. I imagined Eli opening it on Christmas morning, Lisa watching, perhaps even reading the letter aloud. I imagined them both feeling something, connection, maybe even pride. I took the package to the post office on December 12th, paid for 2-day shipping, watched the clerk place it on the outgoing cart like it was just another box, not a piece of my heart tucked inside brown paper. And then I waited. Christmas came. No text, no email, no thank you call. I didn't want to be pushy, so I waited a few more days. Then New Year's. Still nothing. I tried to convince myself they were busy. Maybe Eli was sick. Maybe Lisa just forgot. But a feeling gnawed at me, quiet and insistent. Something wasn't right. I didn't know it then, but that unopened box would become the beginning of the unraveling. A gift meant to stitch old wounds, left to gather dust in the hands of strangers. But I wasn't ready to believe that yet. I still had hope. By January 3rd, the silence had become something louder than any scream. I sat at my kitchen table, the one Mary and I picked out 25 years ago, staring at my phone like it might offer a different result if I blinked fast enough. No texts, no voicemails, just the same empty screen. I'd sent Lisa a simple message the day after Christmas. Did Eli get the gift? I hope he liked it. Nothing. 3 days later, let me know if he's feeling okay. I'd love to talk with him sometime. Still nothing. It wasn't until January 10th that I finally called. Her voice was clipped, formal, like I was a telemarketer who'd caught her mid-dinner. Hey, it's me, I said, trying to sound cheerful. I was just wondering if Eli opened. Dad, she interrupted. Can we not do this every time? He has enough toys. You don't need to keep sending stuff. I swallowed hard. It wasn't just stuff. I thought he'd enjoy it. I know you mean well, she said, but maybe it's time you stop trying so hard. The line went dead before I could reply. No goodbye, no pause. I stared at the phone in my hand, the silence on the other end like a vacuum, pulling at something deep inside me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. At that moment, all I felt was confusion, and something worse, doubt. Had I missed something? Was there something in my letter that offended her? A word, a phrase, a memory too raw? That night, I reread my copy of the letter. I had written it with care, sharing how Mary used to sing Frosty the Snowman, off-key, how Lisa once believed reindeer could read her thoughts, how proud I was of the boy Eli was becoming. There was no bitterness, no guilt trips, only love. But something had changed. I could feel it. The following Thursday, I went to the blood drive at St. Matthew's. It was routine. I'd been donating every few months since Mary passed. A quiet way to give back. The mobile unit was parked next to a small community thrift center. Hearts and Hands Resale. While waiting for my turn, I wandered inside. Rows of donated clothes lined the racks, and shelves overflowed with books, toys, and holiday knickknacks. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Maybe just distraction. That's when I saw it. Near the back, tucked among a row of unopened children's toys, was a box. A familiar brown package. My handwriting on the side. The same neat lettering I'd used on every birthday parcel, every holiday surprise. It was sealed, still taped shut. The return address was mine. The shipping label smudged from time. I froze. At first, I thought, it couldn't be. Maybe someone else had similar writing. But then I saw the corner of the envelope I'd taped on top. White, lined, slightly crumpled from the curve of the box. My letter, unopened, unread. I stepped closer, my breath hitching like I'd been punched. I reached out but didn't touch it. My hands trembled. "Sir?" A voice behind me, a woman in a blue volunteer apron. "Are you looking for something specific?" I turned slowly. "This box. Do you know who donated it?" She squinted at the label. We had a few donations from a family named Anderson after Christmas. Dropped off a bunch of toys and books, all new. Shame to see them unused." Anderson. That was Lisa's married name. I thanked her and walked out. My legs felt like water. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't call. I didn't cry. Instead, I drove home in silence. Parked the car, sat in my driveway for nearly an hour. It wasn't the gift that hurt. Not really. It was the message behind it. She hadn't even opened it. Hadn't read the letter. Hadn't let Eli see what his grandfather had lovingly chosen, paid for, wrapped, and shipped. I wasn't rejected for the toy. I was rejected for the thought. And that stung more than any insult she could have spoken aloud. When I got inside, I poured myself a glass of water, sat down in my study, and looked around. The framed photos. The stack of unread letters I had written to Eli. The bookshelf filled with stories I once hoped to read him. The gift hadn't been tossed. It had been erased. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about that box, sitting on a shelf, like it meant nothing, like I meant nothing. I had spent so many years trying to prove I could be more than the absent father I once was. But maybe some debts can't be paid. Maybe some bridges aren't rebuilt with words or wooden trains or 2-day shipping. Maybe I had been chasing a connection that had already been severed. And the worst part? I still wasn't ready to stop trying. The following Saturday, I couldn't sit still. I'd gone 3 days without eating a proper meal. I kept replaying the thrift store in my head, the tape still unbroken, the letter untouched, the way that volunteer said Anderson, like it was just another name on a drop-off slip. I needed answers. I needed to look her in the eye and ask why. I drove to Lisa's house. No call, no warning. I didn't want to give her a chance to avoid it. I wanted the truth, raw, unfiltered, even if it shattered whatever illusion I was still clinging to. The neighborhood was exactly as I remembered. Suburban, clean, identical houses with color-coordinated mailboxes. Her driveway was empty. Maybe they were out, or maybe I was lucky. I rang the doorbell, then knocked. The door opened, but only part way. Lisa stood there, arms crossed, a tired expression on her face. "Dad," she said flatly, "what are you doing here?" "I needed to talk," I said, face to face. She didn't move. This really isn't a good time. "Lisa, I saw the box at the thrift store." Her eyes flickered. "So? You didn't even open it." She exhaled sharply. Because I knew what it was. Another train set. Another letter. It wasn't just a toy, I said. It was for Eli. It was for you. And I didn't want it, she snapped. Silence sat between us like a wall. After a beat, she added, You were never there when I needed you. And now, suddenly, you want to show up for my son like none of that ever happened? I felt the words like a slap. I've been trying, Lisa, I said softly. I've been writing, sending things. I've been trying to reconnect. She shook her head. Trying now doesn't erase before. Before? I repeated, my voice hollow. Her tone shifted, quieter. Do you remember when I was 16? When I stopped going to school for 3 weeks? I blinked. You had the flu. That's what Mary told me. Lisa laughed, bitter. I was in a psychiatric ward, Dad, for depression. They thought I might hurt myself. The air left my lungs. You didn't know? She said, eyebrows raised. No, I whispered. She told the school not to call you. She said you were too busy, that you didn't need the distraction. She thought keeping up appearances was more important. My knees nearly gave out. I stepped back instinctively, like the truth had pushed me. You were gone on a project in Arizona, Lisa continued. Mom came to visit me once. She said, Don't tell your father. He's under pressure. I believed her. I clutched the porch rail. You never asked where I'd gone. You never noticed, she added, voice low. That's not true, I murmured. I noticed you were different after that. But you never asked why, she replied. Because deep down, you didn't want to know. There it was, a wound I hadn't even known I'd inflicted. Lisa crossed her arms tighter. And now you think some toys and letters make you a grandfather? No, I said. I don't think they make up for anything. I thought maybe they could start something new. I don't want to start anything, she said. I'm protecting my son from the cycle. Before I could answer, the door closed. Not slammed, just gently shut. I stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked back to my car. I didn't cry, not right away. That night, I sat in my study, pulled out one of the letters I'd written for Eli, one he'd never read, and stared at the ink like it was someone else's handwriting. Lisa was right. I had missed the signs. I had believed that providing was enough, that sending money and showing up for the big milestones made me a parent. I'd equated function with presence, contribution with love. But I hadn't been there, not when it mattered most. I didn't know where else to go. So I went to the one place that always felt like a reset button, St. Agnes Church. It was empty, quiet, the kind of quiet that hurts your ears at first. I found Father Albright in the back pew, sorting through hymnals. He looked up. Peter? I sat beside him. Do you ever feel like forgiveness isn't yours to ask for? He waited, then said, Tell me what's weighing you. I told him everything, about the gift, the thrift store, the psychiatric ward, the door that shut in my face. I want to rewrite it, I said finally. All of it, the past. Father Albright looked at the stained glass above the altar. Some books don't get rewrites, Peter. But that doesn't mean you stop telling the story. I shook my head. But I missed everything. How do you fix what you didn't even know was broken? He put a hand on my shoulder. You don't fix it. You honor it. You tell the truth, and you leave the door open. I stared ahead, eyes burning. I just wanted to be her dad again, I whispered. She still knows who you are, he said gently, even if she won't say it. We sat in silence, as the wind tapped lightly against the stained glass window. Outside, the night deepened. And inside me, something finally broke. I spent the next few days walking through rooms that no longer felt like mine. The kitchen was too quiet, the living room too neat. My home had become a museum of attempts. Letters never sent, photos never updated, memories frozen in frames that hadn't moved in years. I realized something I should have understood long ago. Waiting for forgiveness is like waiting for rain in a drought. You can hope, you can pray, but you can't force the clouds to open. So I decided to stop waiting. I called my lawyer, Mr. Shapiro, a quiet man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. I want to update my will, I said, sitting across from him at his oak desk. All of it. He raised an eyebrow. Everything? Everything. I explained that I no longer wished to leave anything to Lisa, not out of bitterness, but because she no longer saw me as family. Instead, I wanted my estate to fund a scholarship for children who had been abandoned, neglected, or shut out by their parents. Children like Lisa had once been, though I hadn't known it then. And the scholarship, I added, I want it named after her, the Lisa Langston Scholarship Fund. Mr. Shapiro paused. You're sure about this? Yes, I said. She may not see me the way I wish, but I can still honor the part of her that fought through what I missed. It wasn't revenge. It was the only way I knew how to do right by her without forcing myself into her life. Later that evening, I wrote one last letter. Not to Eli, not to the world, to Lisa. It was short, honest, no pleas, no guilt. If one day you forgive me, tell Eli I loved him, I wrote. I didn't know how to love you properly when it mattered, but I never stopped trying, and I never stopped loving you. I left the letter on my kitchen counter, beside a photo of us from her 8th birthday, the one where she had cake on her nose, and I was smiling like I hadn't already begun slipping away. Then I stepped outside, locked the front door behind me, and went for a walk. Just a walk. No destination. No need to rush. The next morning, I checked the security camera on my front porch. I'd installed it 2 years ago after a package theft, but it had rarely captured more than squirrels and the occasional neighbor kid. But this time, there was something. The footage started at 10:42 p.m. Lisa, standing at my door. Alone. She hesitated before knocking, then tried the doorknob. Locked. She looked around, pulled out a spare key from under the ceramic gnome on the porch. She still remembered, and let herself in. She was inside for 11 minutes. No sound, but the camera had a mic that picked up faint voices through the thin front wall. I pressed play and listened. Rustling. A chair creaking. Then her voice, barely above a whisper. Why did you have to write this now, Dad? Another pause. A sniffle. A stifled sob. I didn't want to hate you forever, she said, voice cracking. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened again, and she stepped out. Her face blotchy. Eyes red. Clutching the letter. She looked at the camera for the briefest moment, then walked away. No note, no message. Just the echo of a daughter breaking in a way only a father could hear. I watched the footage twice, then a third time. I didn't cry, not out of numbness, but because something inside me shifted. Not closure exactly, but something close to it. She had read the letter. She had come. And though she left without a word, I no longer needed one. Forgiveness, I realized, is not a gift we wait to receive. It's a choice we make, alone, in silence, often without applause. I turned off the screen and sat at the table where I'd first wrapped Eli's train set, the same spot where I'd written that letter, folding it with shaking hands. The house was still quiet, still too clean, but now it felt just a little less empty. I had drawn a line, not to push her away, but to protect what remained of myself. She had crossed it, even if just for a moment, and that was enough. 3 days after Lisa's silent visit, I found myself on the front porch again, staring at the street like it might deliver something. Not mail, not an apology, just something to fill the space her footsteps had left. "Mr. Langston," a voice called. It was Emma, the teenage girl who lived next door with her mother. She was walking her golden retriever, earbuds dangling around her neck. "I saw someone at your door the other night," she said, pausing at the steps. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then nodded. "It was my daughter. She stopped by." Emma's eyes widened. "The one you talk about in your letters?" I blinked. "How do you let me borrow your old camcorder, remember? You mentioned her. And your grandson." She hesitated. "Mr. Langston, I know this sounds random, but have you ever thought about telling your story online?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why would I do that?" "Because it matters," she said simply. "People need to hear stories like yours." I wanted to laugh it off. I was 60 years old, barely knew how to upload a photo to my email, but something about Emma's conviction made me pause. "What would that even look like?" I asked. "A video," she said. "You talking, just being honest. I could help record it, edit it. We could put it on a site I use for my school projects." The idea scared me, but I was more afraid of silence. So the next afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with Emma behind a tripod, and a soft light clipped to my bookshelf. The air smelled like dust and lemon oil. My hands trembled as I folded them in front of me. "Okay," Emma said, pressing record. "Just talk, like you're writing one of your letters." I cleared my throat. "My name is Peter Langston," I began. "I'm a father, a grandfather, and for most of my life, I've been trying to fix something I didn't know I broke." What followed wasn't rehearsed. I didn't read from a script. I just talked. About Mary, about Lisa, about Eli, about the train set, about the unopened box, about the letter she finally read. I didn't name her. I didn't blame her. I told the truth, with the tenderness I wished I'd shown 30 years earlier. When I finished, Emma wiped her eyes behind the camera. "That was beautiful," she whispered. She uploaded it that night, titling the video, "The Christmas Box That Was Never Opened." I didn't expect anything. By morning, it had 18,000 views. By day 3, it had passed 1 million. Thousands of comments flooded in. Stories from people estranged from their parents, from grandparents shut out of their grandchildren's lives, from children whose parents had missed too much but still longed to reconnect. One comment stood out. A user named EU Butterfly 1995 wrote, "Lisa, if you're watching this, and I believe you are, remember, forgiveness isn't something we give because someone deserves it. We give it because we deserve peace." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The comment had over 8,000 likes. I didn't know if Lisa had seen the video. I didn't ask, but I started to believe she might have. That night, I turned off all the lights and sat in the dark. Not sad, not hopeful, just still. Then the next morning, an email arrived. The sender, elilangston23@gmail.com. The subject line, "Hi." My heart stuttered. I opened it. The body of the email read, "Grandpa, I can play with the train. Now Mom said it's okay, I like it. No punctuation, no capital letters, no emojis. Just raw, unfiltered truth from an 8-year-old. I read it again, then again, and then, for the first time in a long, long while, I broke. I cried like I hadn't even at Mary's funeral, not out of grief, but out of relief, of being seen, heard, allowed, even in the smallest way, to matter. I replied with a simple message. I'm so glad you like it, Eli. I picked it just for you. If you ever want to talk about trains or anything else, I'm here. I didn't expect a reply, but I had something better. A crack in the wall. A light through the door. That email, those 12 words, meant more than any speech, any letter, any Christmas miracle I could have dreamed of. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't repair, but it was contact, and it was real. That afternoon, I printed the email and framed it, hung it right above my desk, where I used to draft my letters. Visitors might think it was nothing, just a message from a child. But to me, it was a map back to something I thought was lost. Not a grand reunion, not a parade, just a quiet reminder that sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest echoes, and that even if the past can't be rewritten, sometimes the next line still belongs to you. Spring came slowly to Ohio that year. The trees took their time blooming, as if they too were unsure if the frost had truly passed. I found comfort in that hesitance, in the way nature didn't rush itself back to life. Neither did I. Since the video, life had shifted, not dramatically, but gently, like a door creaking open in a quiet room. I didn't speak to Lisa. We didn't exchange messages, but I knew she had seen the email, knew she had allowed Eli to write me, and that was enough to change the shape of my days. I started volunteering at a small community group called Bridge the Gap, a support circle for older adults estranged from their families. Every Tuesday afternoon, we met in the back of the local library, folding chairs, coffee in styrofoam cups, faces worn by time, but still full of something resembling hope. I didn't speak the first few meetings. I just listened. To a grandmother whose daughter cut her off after she remarried, to a man whose son moved away and never sent a forwarding address, to a woman who hadn't seen her grandchildren since 2014. Pain echoed in every corner of that room, but so did resilience. Eventually, I shared my story. I spent most of my life thinking I was doing the right thing, I said, my voice steady. Working hard, providing. But I missed the small stuff, the birthday parties, the quiet talks, the signs I wasn't looking for. They nodded. Some cried. I gave my daughter space, I continued, not because I wanted to, but because she needed it more than I needed to be forgiven. I paused, then added, sometimes we leave gaps in our children's hearts, and we don't see how wide they've grown until we try to step across them. That line stayed with a few of them. One woman wrote it down. Another asked if I'd speak at her church. I wasn't trying to become anyone's hero. I just wanted to make sense of what I'd lived through. I kept writing letters to Eli, even though I hadn't sent another since the email. I didn't know if I ever would. But the act itself, of remembering, of expressing, was healing. Each morning, I made coffee, watered the plants, read the newspaper, and watched the sun crawl across the floorboards like it always had. And slowly, my house began to feel like a home again. Not because it was filled with people, but because I had stopped filling it with regret. Then one night, everything shifted again. It was 2:07 a.m. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom and, out of habit, checked my email before heading back to bed. One new message from lisa.langstonegmail.com. No subject line, no text, just one attachment. I clicked. It was a photo. Eli, sitting cross-legged on a rug, surrounded by tracks and wooden train cars. His face beamed with delight, caught mid-laugh, the kind of pure joy only children can pull off without trying. In his hands was the engine, the one I'd had engraved. His name glinted faintly in the photo. Eli Langston, engineer of dreams. I stared at it for a long time. Zoomed in. Noticed the letter beside him. Creased. Unfolded. Maybe even read. There was no caption. No explanation. Just a message written not in words, but in the simple power of presence. Lisa hadn't said, "I'm sorry." She hadn't said, "Thank you." She hadn't said anything at all. But she didn't have to. That picture was her way of opening the box. Not the one I'd mailed months ago, but the one I'd buried between us, wrapped in silence and fear and wounds too old to name. She had cracked it open, even if only a little. I pressed my palm to the screen, closed my eyes, and whispered, "That's enough." I didn't reply. Not right away. I didn't want to make the moment heavier than it needed to be. I just saved the image, printed a copy, and slid it into the same frame where Eli's birthday photo had once been. It sat on my shelf, quiet, still, whole. 2 weeks later, I returned to bridge the gap. When it was my turn to speak, I brought the photo with me. "This," I said, holding it up, "isn't a resolution. It's not a reunion. It's not even a guarantee." I looked around the room, at the hopeful, worn-out eyes that mirrored mine. But it's something. A thread. A whisper. A step. They nodded. I smiled. That's all we need sometimes. Outside, the sun warmed the sidewalk. The breeze carried the scent of blooming dogwood. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man waiting at a closed door. I felt like someone who had finally stepped through. Not into the past, but into peace.